you. And I just wanted to explain a little bit on something you said. Broome County did just recently buy a tank. In Binghamton, the SWAT team has a tank. So, they're not kidding when they say that stuff really does infiltrate up here. So that brings me here to Elmira, and we've kind of strategically done this. We started down at the border, and we went over to Massachusetts, and we went to Binghamton, and we're going to come to Elmira. Now, Elmira is a result of what happens when you build a prison and then build a town around it. During the Free School Band Tour in April, I realized that our town was built with the intentions of the folks being sent here to be forgotten. It started in the Civil War when Elmira was the home of a prison camp that killed 3,000 Confederate soldiers in a year, fittingly called Elmira. After the war, when the camp was closed, we opened the Elmira Reformatory, designed to lock up wayward boys. It's been transformed into a maximum security prison, locally known as the Hill. Driving by that building day after day as I was growing up, it was a constant reminder that we could end up there. Years later, our community became the home of the first Supermax prison in New York State, Southport. Many of you who came here in April for the van tour may remember that Southport was the prison that we went to go visit when we were greeted by a squadron of corrections officers asking us what our intentions were and demanding that we not capture the prison in any of our photography or filming. These prisons have driven a culture in our town where those who work there are deified and their jobs are constantly touted as nearly impossible feats that are critical to the safety in our area. We're led to believe that the inmates that are housed there are subhuman and deserve to be there because of their own poor choices. Chris Moss, the man who serves as our county executive, has spent his entire adult life as a law officer. He worked in the Sheriff's Department since 1989 and was the sheriff of our county for most of that time. In 2014, he ran for Lieutenant Governor under a Republican candidate, Rob Escarino. I don't know if very many of you guys from New York City might know who he is. After they lost, he came back home and ran for county executive. But his mind has been politically motivated, particularly when it comes to law enforcement ever since, and that hasn't changed. When he won the election for county executive, he cleared the House by firing 9 county employees literally within a week of the time that he was elected. And he's been playing with frivolous lawsuits at everybody he can. He rails about the criminal justice reforms that got passed in New York State last year. He claims that the bail reforms are just another way of letting criminals run free instead of recognizing the disproportionate number of poor people that get hurt by bail. He believes that the idea of speedy discovery is a liberal conspiracy designed to mess with his district attorney's office, and all he wants is more money for his district attorneys, and we should stop wasting money on all these criminals. I feel at times like I woke up in a bad episode of The A-Team. I don't know how many of you guys remember The A-Team from back in the 80s, but there was always this backwater town that had a completely corrupt police department, and you were just waiting for these good guys to come in and save you from all the stuff that was happening there. Because they were applying intimidation techniques, which I thought were just on TV. I didn't realize this really happens in the real world. Besides having the sheriff county executive, our mayor is still a corrections officer at our local jail. And across the street from here, the Elmira Enforcers are celebrating their home opener for the season. They're our hockey team, and they have a mascot that personifies every negative stereotype that you can think of for law enforcement. Last year during the playoffs, they had the theme of embrace the hate, because if you're doing your job right, then they'll hate you, because you're going to beat them. Last season, there were several times that the real police were called to the arena during games for altercations not just between the players, but between members of the management team who attacked referees when they disagreed with penalty calls, causing huge fines and suspensions. And yet we continue to put them on that pedestal and make them our idols. With all this normalizing going on, it's not really all that surprising to me that local policy makers don't mind codifying and fortifying the combat forces in our town. When you support your military forces, but you fail to offer mental health or drug abuse recovery resources, some unfortunate things can be predicted with pretty much ease. It is for these reasons and many more that the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, has been deeply involved locally with the case of Gary Strobridge. He was a 49-year-old man who lived just over the bridge on the south side on Horner Street. Friends and neighbors tell us that Gary was a great guy who loved the outdoors and loved to make art. His mom, Mary, tells us that he was devoted to reading his Bible, and his dad, Bryce, is still watching the door waiting for him to come home. On August 22nd, 2019, Gary had a bad day. Can anybody here relate to that? Anybody else had a bad day? A really, really bad day? Well, he had a really bad day on that particular Thursday night. He climbed out his window of his house and stood on his roof making comments that spooked his neighbors. He had recently experienced a lack of employment and was feeling the weight of the world. A neighbor tried to help him out by calling 911 and reporting that he was having a mental health crisis, standing on his roof, threatening to hurt himself. What happened next is still under investigation by the state attorney general, but one thing is for certain: Gary's not here to tell us what happened. The police released a statement that has bigger holes in it than any pack of Swiss cheese I've ever seen. They said that they were able to talk him off the roof, although one eyewitness heard an officer say, "If he jumps, that's not my problem." He came downstairs and met officers at his door, where they say he exhibited further strange and unusual behavior. Witnesses say that he was handcuffed and then tased and beaten. In their public release, the police confirmed that a taser had been discharged. The officers proceeded to arrest him on charges that he was a danger to himself or others under the mental hygiene law and tried to take him to a local hospital. Interesting side note, they did not release the name of the hospital that they sent him to, although there are only 2 in town and only one that responds to this kind of crisis, so we kind of all know what hospital he went to. The police report says that the hospital staff had started the intake process when another physical altercation broke out. He was tased again, and according to officers, he went limp and unresponsive. He was transported to Syracuse and was admitted to the intensive care unit of Upstate Medical. When Mary and Bryce arrived, they had to go to the nurse's station to confirm that that was their son. They couldn't recognize him because of the damage that had been done to his face. His face was so bruised beyond recognition, and his nose was obviously broken. He didn't register any brain activity. It was a short time after that we lost Gary. There's so many factors that played into this horrific nightmare. For one thing, mental illness is being criminalized at so many levels of our society. Every time somebody grabs a gun and kills people, we automatically call it a mental health problem. That fails to recognize that not everyone that's having a bad day is going to go and kill people. Not only does that impact what services these folks receive, but in what manner they are received. When these things happen, politicians say, "I'm going to help improve the provision of mental health services in my area." But as long as we have a healthcare system that provides profit over people, we're not going to see any new kind of way to provide mental health treatment. When we allow a combat force to respond to a mental health call, what are we saying? Some folks in the community have taken offense to my calling this a combat force. But from what the witnesses have told us, there was at least 5 police cars that responded. That's 5 sets of lights flashing, 5 sirens screaming, doors opening, and boots hitting the ground preparing for battle. What does that do to trigger trauma? The people in that neighborhood felt like a combat force had shattered the peace of their street and descended on their house. That says to them that this is how we respond to mental health crisis. Not with ambulances and orderlies, but with handcuffs like criminals. What did that do inside Gary's head when he saw them coming? When he met them at the door? When he was being walked through the hospital? What extra weight did that stigma and shame cause him? One of the reasons I felt this really needed a bright spotlight is because Gary's not alone. Any one of us could have been Gary. For those of us who live here in Chemung County, the prisons aren't making us any safer. Out of the 88,681 residents who live in Chemung County, almost a quarter of us have more bad mental health days than we do good. More than 30% of us have housing insecurity. 15% of us have disability. A third of us live in a food desert. A quarter of us have experienced some kind of food insecurity this year. And almost half of us don't even have a high school diploma. The life expectancy in the 14901 is dismal. And more than 10% of our folks that visit the emergency room have some kind of behavioral health diagnosis, with almost 15% of them being readmitted to the hospital within 30 days of discharge. Our local high school was built on a toxic land, a remnant from the Industrial Revolution that has long since left town. Elmira Heights next week is hosting a meeting with the EPA to talk about TCE, a toxin used to clean metals that's being found in our groundwater and being dispersed in the air. Oh yeah, there's $1 million upgrade happening to our sewer system at the same time as a dozen folks just came down with Legionnaire's disease recently. Coincidence? Probably not. In closing, Gary's mom has asked me to remind you all to hug your children and grandchildren every day. We don't know when that option is going to be stolen from us. She also wants us to know that Gary was denied his civil right to be safe in his person by the use of excessive force and police brutality. So this story is really laid on my heart, and I haven't been able to put it down. But it's the same with all these stories. All of these stories come together. Just like Fernando had told us, remember that what you allow to happen at the border, it's only a matter of time before that infiltrates the interior. When we allow such strong militarization and intimidation at the border, it's just a matter of time before it's here. We see it in the dehumanization of our entire population. We see the tank in Broome County for their SWAT team. I know Elmira's not alone in this. Tim gave us a really vibrant picture of what's happening at the border. Jackie talked about Broome County. We also heard a little bit about what's going on in Massachusetts. All these stories are connected. So I made some observations with some of these similarities that we're hearing. If you agree when I talk to you about this stuff, I want to hear you. Who's going to agree with me and say, you know that's right? So let me tell you what I've heard a little bit here. First of all, each one of these speakers is amazingly courageous.
I know that's right.
That's right. Every one of them. And it takes a lot to get up here and tell these stories and go through this pain. And Jackie, I know you're angry because I know you feel like this is your obligation and that's important. But it's really crappy that we have a system that's going to make you feel obligated, right?
No, that's right.
That's right. That's right. And each one of these stories is real. And they're personal. And they're political. We can pretend they're only personal, but they're not only personal. They are political and they are intentional and they're connected. Each one, that's right. We know that's right. That's right. And the impact of these decisions where profit gets put over people. These are some of the outcomes that we're going to see.
You know that's right.
You know that's right. But you know what's also true? We can change this.
No, that's right.
I know that's right. This is a point that we at the Poor People's Campaign want to make sure that we don't dismiss this as it's just too complex. It's just too hard. We can. We can, and we have to. So we look back in our history a little bit during the first Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. Martin Luther King told us, history has taught it's not enough for people to be angry. The supreme task is to organize and unite people so that their anger becomes a transforming force.
Yeah.
You know that's right.
I used one of my quotes earlier, but it's so beautiful that we just have to say it some more. The dispossessed of this nation, the poor, both white and Negro, live in a cruelly unjust society. They must organize a revolution against injustice, not against the lives of the persons who are their fellow citizens, but against the structures through which the society is refusing to take means which have been called for and which are at hand to lift the load of poverty. There are millions of poor people in this country who have very little or even nothing to lose. And if they can be helped to take action together, They will do so with a freedom and a power that is a new and unsettling force for our complacent national life.
That's right.
What do you think? Does that sound right?
Yeah.
We move forward together.
Not one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
We are the Poor People's Campaign.
National call for moral revival.
Poor People's Campaign.
National call for moral revival.
Poor People's Campaign.
National call for moral revival.
Woo! That's work to do that. Thank you, everyone. Oh, yeah. Always have to end with a song. Karen's here. Why wouldn't we end with a song?
All right, you know what, Cynthia, you gotta stand up though. And this is a song that we often do, paying tribute to the testimonies that we've heard, and knowing that all of these issues, when we tell these different stories, they're all connected, and that in hearing these stories, we are charged with the fact that we can't be silent anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So we're gonna sing, somebody's hurting my people. And it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. I'm not gonna use them.
I don't think you're that out of it.
Somebody's hurting our people, and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. I tell you it's gone on far too long. Oh, somebody's hurting our people, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Did you hear somebody trying to build that wall now? And it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. I tell you it's gone on far too long. Oh, somebody trying to build that wall now. And it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Did you hear somebody hurting our brothers? And it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. I tell you it's gone on far too long. Oh, somebody's hurting our brothers. And it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Did you know somebody trying to take our houses? And it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. I tell you it's gone on far too long. Oh, somebody trying to take our houses. And it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. My people, somebody's hurting our people, and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. I tell you it's gone on far too long. Oh, somebody's hurting our people, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. And we won't be silent. And